All right, so welcome everyone to the latest Trees Around the Globe student research campaign. Today is the 13th of February, 2024. It is a Tuesday, and this is the State of Trees, February 2024, roadmapping student research for IVSS 2024 through data analysis, data synthesis, and firsthand experience with a GLOBE teacher superstar, and that is Ms. Diana Johns from Crestwood High School. So we will feature her in a few minutes, but I'm going to go over a couple things first, and I want to let you know that Peter Falcon and Peter Nelson on our campaign team are not available today. They have some other things they mandatorily needed to attend to. So you are stuck with me today, so hopefully that's okay. And my video, for some reason, is not sharing, so you just have to look at the picture up there of me at my NASA Wallace Flight Facility base in Wallops Island, Virginia. So today we're going to have a featured presentation, and we're also then going to talk rather informally about some of the things that you'd like to see. This is a combination of things, some questions that we posed at the end of last month's webinar for IVSS. And I also wanted to mention that I took a look at the GLOBE webpage, and there are a bunch of, I think there were about 34 IVSS projects already submitted to the GLOBE website, to GLOBE, but I saw about a third of them, which is great, have to do with trees and land cover and greening. So I was happy to see that as well. So, if you get a chance, take a look, and I have some links here later on. And then we will have, like I mentioned, we will have an informal discussion, and hopefully everyone can participate in that. Feel free to use the chat at any time. And Larissa, if you see something that comes up in the chat that needs attention right away, please let me know. Feel free to just interrupt, and so we can address that as well.
Sure, no problem.
All right, thank you. All right, so to get this webinar started, I like to, I've been doing this lately, I like to show some things to, sweeten the mood a little bit, and get us ready for some discussion. But this is a quote from Cecilia Payne Kapachkin, and she is a British American astronomer and astrophysicist. And I really like this quote from her. The reward of a young scientist is the emotional thrill of being the first person in the history of the world to see something or to understand something. Nothing can compare with that experience. And this ties in well to students doing research, whether it's just, well, I should say, whether it's just prior to the major research, to just observing their environment, observing something that, they maybe nobody else has seen before, a certain tree, or, a changing land cover that they see in a way that no one else has before. And this leads to lots of questions that then can spark ideas for student research projects. So, we all, the scientist is a big title to give someone, but honestly, I think we're all scientists of some caliber, because when we're looking around as a child at the environment, we're exploring. What do scientists do? They explore. Children like to answer questions. Okay, what do scientists do? They answer questions. So, yes, that may be a generalization, but I really like the idea of, all of us being scientists, because we're all looking around us, we're exploring, we're trying to figure things out. And every time, as you know, we figure things out, more questions pop up. So, I just thought this quote was really nice to get us started. So today we are going to feature Miss Diana Ray Johns, GLOBE superstar teacher, and I came up with that, and I'm going to stick by that because I've known Diana for a while now. I visited her school back at one of the student research symposiums in Michigan. It was actually in Detroit. And then she's going to talk a little bit about her experience with student research, the GLOBE International Virtual Science Symposium, and how she has done things with her students in her school, in her classrooms, over the years. So, she has a great wealth of experience, and that's going to be the main part of the webinar today. And we're going to build off of that then, and have a little bit of discussion, about what you are doing or still need, help with the GLOBE IVSS 2024, whether it be online tools. And what I'm going to do is we're going to answer these things as best as possible today. And then my team of me and Peter are going to go over all these things with our planning, for the March webinar. And even though the 6th of March is the due date for the IVSS research projects to be submitted to GLOBE. Once in a while we do see that gets extended. I don't know, so don't think it's going to be extended at all, but it may. That's just a possibility. That's all. That's all GLOBE, the GLOBE program's decision, the GIO, the GLOBE Implementation Office's decision. And then after we have a little bit of informal discussion, which will also focus on these questions that I mentioned earlier. The what do you need? Will your students be submitting a 2024 IVSS research project? What are some student research ideas you are thinking of? And what do you need from the TREES campaign team? We're going to take this all into heart. And what I want to say about this is, though, the last two questions here, the what are some student research ideas you are thinking of? What do you need from the TREES campaign team? That just doesn't have to revolve around the GLOBE IVSS 2024. This can be a long-term thing. So, what you need in a sense of, from the TREES campaign, what do you want to learn about? What is some of the science and/or NASA missions you want us to potentially find some really awesome scientists who have worked with that information? What do you want to learn about? Because lots of different missions have been are up in space. We just had the PACE mission launch, which is looking at phytoplankton, aerosols, and all these things, looking at ocean color. That was launched last week from the Cape Canaveral at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So that's flying in space right now. There's no data from that satellite yet because they're doing all the checks still right now with it. But the data will be coming out, I would say, about within a month or so. They have to do some test data first to make sure the satellite's working correctly. And then after that, I have a couple slides I want to take a look at with some examples of past research projects. And then, I did some graphical analysis of all the tree height data that has come in since we started the campaign on the 15th of September of 2018. And then, we can open it up to any discussion or final thoughts after that. But as I mentioned, our featured presentation will be Diana Ray Johns and her experience, just to, if anybody has any questions or wants to hear from someone with a vast amount of knowledge, working with the GLOBE program, student research, IVSS. So let me run down some of these things here. As I show every campaign webinar, we have metrics, and the metrics are coming in fast and furious. We have over 12,000 measurements just from year 6 of the campaign, which began on the 1st of October of 2023. And we have over 3,700 global sites. And this is all summative for tree height, land cover, and greenings, green up and green down. So for the full campaign, which, as I mentioned, we launched, in tandem with the launch of the ICESat-2 satellite, because as you know, that has a huge part in our campaign, and I'm the education lead for that mission at NASA. So, it's near and dear to my heart. But we have over 180,000 observations of tree heights, land cover, and greenings from almost 58,000 global sites across the world over the last about 5.5 years or so. We have 66 webinars with 16 special ones. That makes us a total of 82 campaign webinars so far. We have 68 campaign-related blogs, and this related in the sense of trees, land cover, and the trees and land cover science blogs on the Globe Observer. You may have seen those in the news sections, and we put those out on social media as well. And we have participants from 63 countries. And when I say participants, these are folks who are part of the campaign, who attend the webinars, who submit the data and submit research projects in the name of the Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign. So I want to thank all of you for that. And we know every one of these measurements here, this 180,000 observations, are not all from specific Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign members, but this is an amazing amount of data that you can look at over the last 5 years. Because as you know, with NASA, NASA really tends to use the starting gold standard of looking at change over time. They use the 5-year demarcation for that. So when we look at that, we want to look at see how things changed over time for 5 years and then 10 years and then 15 years. I mean, yes, we can do everything in between, but we like those kind of incremental stages there because then we go all the way up to, some of the earlier ones all the way back through beginning of Landsat, was it 52 years ago? So we have lots of data, 5 decades plus of data from the Landsat series of satellites. All right, so I want to showcase this too. We had the 100,000th globe tree observation, and this was already back in October 15th of 2023, but I did not notice it in the database right away. So, but this comes from Arequipa in Peru, from Globe Peru, and you can see here we have a friendly, man's best friend, woman's best friend here. This is a dog standing here by the tree, and this is a tree height of 3.31 meters, which I think is interesting because even though it says that in the database it's 3.31 meters, which to me it kind of looks like it's a little taller than that, but I don't know. I'm not at that tree. But as you know, with the GLOBE program, we really don't identify a tree as a tree unless it's at least 5 meters tall, right? So, but even though we know we can see this, we look at it, we know that is a tree. That is definitely a tree. It seems to be a shorter than we like tree, but like I said, it kind of looks like that's a little bigger. So I'm looking at maybe some type of user error in that, but that's important to look at because if someone sees this and they say, "Hey, that's the tree that I measured," and Brian's saying that it's not 3.31 meters, let me go out and take another observation, either using the GLOBE observer or potentially, a handheld clinometer. But I wanted to showcase this because this is a 100,000th globe tree height observation that was submitted to the GLOBE database. Right now, we're about, I think it's around 103,000 since then. So, they're adding up steadily. All right. So I'm going to go back and to the main room. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce Diana Johns, and she is going to be our featured presenter today. She has been, and I don't know the number of years of how long you've been with the GLOBE program, Diana. You can mention that, but she is at Crestwood High School. You saw in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, and I've worked with Diana for a while now, and a lot of you who are on this webinar probably have at some point, or have heard of her, or have seen a presentation by her. So let me go ahead and pass it on to you, Diana, and thank you so much for presenting. And before you jump in, if you have any questions for Diana, please put those in the chat, or when we do the questions after her presentation. What I would like to do, you can unmute yourself and ask questions. You can raise your hand or just unmute yourself, but feel free to put these any questions or comments in the chat that we can talk with Diana about after her presentation. So take it away, Diana.
Alrighty, can everybody hear me okay? I'll
Sounds good.
Start it. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I do teach high school science at Crestwood High School. You can see a picture of us here, sort of a satellite map of where we're at. We're located in a sea of houses in a subdivision. And of course, here in Michigan, in North America, we're surrounded by the Great Lakes. So we're really blessed with a wonderful opportunity to investigate not just trees, but of course, the great water that surrounds us. In terms of my students, I teach primarily AP Environmental Science, although I'm going to have to talk quick because I couldn't get the computer in the other room to work. And I've got an astronomy class that I have to have come in. But anyways, my students are a diverse group of individuals. We come from, some of my AP students, I mean, it sounds like they might be like some of the really smart kids, but really in environmental science, we try to pull up all of our students. And so it doesn't matter if I sometimes have special ed students. I have students who have got English as a second language, but it's a real eclectic group of students that I have the opportunity to work with. We try to get outside whenever we can to do science. This is a picture of them doing some hydrology research in a local stream. But we've also done a lot with trees, of course, over the years, because as you can see from where we were in a satellite view, we don't have a lot of green space. We don't have a lot of natural areas near us. And so whenever we can find the opportunity to work with some of the GLOBE protocols, we choose those areas that, of course, are closest to us. We like to do a lot with the pedosphere, soil, if the students take soils from their backyard. And a little bit too, just to shout out to NASA Science too, in my astronomy class, we use a lot of the resources that NASA, of course, has produced over the years. So we find those really useful. If you take a look at some of my students here, they're a group of students who don't just do GLOBE protocols in school. We try to get them interested beyond the class. And so a lot of my students who are very busy with other activities, they work with me after they finish the class, and we actually start a lot of the research projects during the summer. We don't really require them to do any of the research, but I think that the word has gotten out that we have a lot of fun with what we do and we learn a lot, and there's a lot of great opportunities. And so students step forward to participate in those activities. So my screen is not moving. Let's see what happens. There we go. So again, we use GLOBE protocols for when we're working on all of these things. I teach the GLOBE protocols as part of the actual class. And so students learn all about atmospheric protocols, they learn about the pedosphere, they learn about the hydrosphere. And then we apply those, of course, to some of the environmental issues that we're studying in class. And the good news is that they become interested enough that they begin to ask questions and relate what we're collecting data on locally with what they're learning about nationally. And so this has really worked out good for us. Excuse me for this. It seems like nothing wants to work right today. So anyways, when we take a look at some of these things that students are doing, research has been a fundamental part of what we're doing. I hope nobody's getting dizzy here. If we take a look at the students here on the left, I actually had some students do bat research a few years ago where they used muck readings and tree species that they identified to try to find out where certain bats were prevalent. They got interested in that because of the white nose fungus that had been spreading in North America. So they wanted to do some baseline research to see how trees and habitat and atmospheric conditions affected bat populations. It turned out that that was pretty cool research to do because the Fish and Wildlife Service came to me a couple of years later and they were doing an environmental impact study of the area. And they actually used the student GLOBE research as part of the report so that they would have some baseline data on bat populations that they didn't have through any other means. So again, research is one of those things that we don't require, but we certainly do. Students want to be involved in. Here's some pictures of some of the various presentations that my students have made. And I have to thank everybody. I see some names here in the people that are watching, and none of the things that my students have accomplished would be possible without the tremendous support that so many agencies and so many people provided me with. The area that I teach in, I'm a Title I school, so we get federal support to help disadvantaged students. Most of my students do not speak English as their first language at home. So a lot of my students have special things that they have to overcome. And as a result of the materials and the time that many of you spent with my students, it's made a real definable difference. And I want you to look at this one individual because I'm going to kind of highlight this person who's moving the mouse around because you're going to see him at the very end. So anyways, part of the whole presentation that Brian wanted me to address is basically how we come up with research questions. And again, these research questions only come up as they relate to what surround my students. It's interesting to find out what's happening in other areas, but my students are intimately interested in their own backyard. So we're really lucky that we do have at least a few things close to us that my students can investigate. We've got a local river, we've got trees that grow in some of our neighborhoods, and we've used those as the basis of asking questions about the sites that are right near the school. So we've had students, like I said, do some bat research. We've had some based on habitat. We've had students look at vernal pools. We've had students look at water quality. And of course, we've looked at trees and again, how those are integrated into the local ecosystem and how they affect areas where students live. So in terms of how I get my students started, they've already practiced the protocols in class. And so what I do is once we finish the course in an AP class, you basically teach the students through May, and then after they take the test, they're essentially done with the class. So we use that time that remains and then the summer to develop research questions and to help them to develop a project. If you take a look, the GLOBE website has been one of the best places to let my students loose on, because when you go to where it says do GLOBE and you see student research reports, this is what I have them do. There's a great filter that they can use to see what our students have done in the past, what students have done in Michigan, what they've done internationally. And that gives them some idea for some of the projects that are out there. And of course, they're not going to do what somebody else has done, but it gives them an idea on how they might be able to apply that locally. So again, one year we had students do a project. They used the muck land classification system, and they looked at different areas, some of the open areas, some of the backyards, and they took a look at, I apologize for that. They took a look at exactly, how each of those factors affect the availability or the frequency of lightning bugs, and that was pretty interesting. So what I did here was I put some of the projects up that students have done on trees in the past. In the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see a research project that my students started before the pandemic hit. And then during the pandemic, they actually went out to the park to answer some of these questions. And then what happened is they were able to finish that. And Brian was kind enough to ask them to present online, and they really enjoyed that. Over here, and this what they looked at was how trees and parks affect the local ecosystem. If you take a look here at this other one on the upper left, we took a look at how trees affect energy use on our campus. And again, we try to keep it as local as possible. Down in the lower left-hand corner, we had students who did some projects with how trees in neighborhoods affect surface temperatures. One of the more recent projects that students did a few years ago was they took a look at river flooding and some of the examples of how soils and trees were found in certain areas along one of our local rivers. And then, of course, again, the differences between native and non-native trees in terms of how they affect surface temperature. And then a couple of years ago, we were able to use some of the materials that were lent to us. We had a little Terra rover, and students took a look at some of the trees in some of the local parks and use those as ways to investigate, again, what areas were most habitable or most comfortable for people when they use the park. So the good news is that students get outside and they do things. The thing is, things don't always go as expected. We've had a few equipment failures. We've had to come up with some redesigns. And again, as a result of that, hang on just a second. This is where it's going to get a little bit sticky. So Brian, I don't know if you wanted to jump on for a second. Brian, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Can you bring it it'll only take me a second.
Yep, sure. All right, does anybody have any thoughts of what Diana has been talking about so far? You can feel free to unmute or put in the chat. You can see, she has a well-established program at Crestwood, and of course, it's not just specifically GLOBE related, but what I think is really cool here, this slide that she has here that she's showcasing, the GLOBE research doesn't always go as expected, and that's one of the things that we've been telling you with the campaign, especially Peter Nelson, that it doesn't always go, the way it's expected, but those are all learning experiences with the research. And as I showed earlier, that tree, I saw Dr. C in the chat. The tree he thinks the tree looks about to be 7 meters, basically based on the dog's height. So I think that's one of the things that the folks who took those observations of the tree, it doesn't look like it went exactly. There was something going on with the tree height observation during that, whether it was human error or there was an error with the the phone's angle. They were holding it wrong or whatever. We don't know, but they're all learning experiences.
I'm back, Brian. Sorry.
All good.
Okay, so my students I'm sorry again because of computer issues. They're going to file in as quietly as they can when the bell rings, but we'll continue on. So hopefully this will work. Okay, if we take a look at this next one, we've got some pictures here of students doing some projects again on our high school campus. One of the things that really has helped us out over the years is if you take a look on this building on the left, we were able to have some fundraisers to invest in a weather networks weather station. And so not only do we submit data on a daily basis to the GLOBE website, we also have some information that's sent automatically as well. We kind of use that as a way to calibrate some of our instruments to see if we're, in the realm of what's correct. Here you see some students, again, investigating some air quality things as they take and attach some devices to the kites to get them up to gather some vertical atmospheric data. Again, I can't thank the people enough who have helped us over the years. Dr. Sykowski here just delivered a frost tube. We'd always wanted to do frost tube investigations. And so earlier this year, he was kind enough to drop this off at the school so that my students could begin their observations. Dave Bedlowski from the Aaron program has been very helpful in getting us to have the equipment that we need for students to investigate various things about the atmosphere, and also about Earth's surface. Also, Tracy Ostrom, I'd like to thank her also. We have students doing some research this year with microplastics, and that wouldn't have been possible, again, without the support of the GLOBE community. And there's more people than that. I can't even begin to tell you about some of the great connections we've been able to make with students at our school as a result of getting to know people at conferences and symposiums. It's been some of the richest professional development I've ever had. One of the things that Brian asked me to talk about too was analyzing and visualizing some of the data. I have to be honest, we use the visualization system that we've got on the GLOBE website. It's so much better than it was a few years ago, but it's a little bit slow with some of the Chromebooks we've got. But we use it for some of the things, but I'll be honest, most of the data that we input, students put into an Excel spreadsheet. And then from the Excel spreadsheet, we run various statistics that high school students could run. And that's basically how we analyze some of the data to see how valid or invalid it might be. And then my job as their mentor is, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, I'm kind of old school here, but I will edit some of their work and give them some suggestions. But once I show them how to write their paper and analyze their data and create their graphs, rather than teaching each new group, actually, because there's a group of students doing this each year, each group sort of pulls up the next group behind them. So while some of them know how to do the statistics really well and input the data, then they'll train the next group coming up. So it becomes a self-replicating process of people sharing information. Here's a look at some of the more recent things that we've done. But again, one of the things that's helped my students the most get excited about this is the chance to present their data at various symposiums. My students have had a chance to go all over the United States to present their research. And again, thank you to all of the people that organize, the annual meeting, all the people who set up, some of the regional symposiums. These are great places for my students to meet with scientists, to ask questions, and to get encouraged as they do their research. And so those activities where we've been in person, and even the ones that we had to do virtual during COVID, were what really drove my students to want to complete some of their research. One of the things that I try to do also to get the kids excited about this is to make sure that people know about the great good that they're doing. So advertising the work that they do is really important. We've even been recognized. There's actually been a couple of commercials made locally about our watershed, and they've actually videotaped my students to do several short presentations for these commercials. But again, we make sure they get certificates. We make sure that they're recognized in the local paper. If you look over in the lower right-hand corner, I had a student a few years ago who was chosen to be part of the SEAS NASA summer internship program that was held in Texas. And that was pretty neat for a kid who's 17 to be able to have the chance to do that. That really has made a difference in her life. And then some of the things in the middle, we try to highlight some of the students in our local newsletters and such. And so this is one of the things that, again, really gets them interested. So what we do is we try to pay special attention to some of the special events. We had the big eclipse back in 2017 that my students, that happened during the summer, that my students developed some research projects on. And we actually had former NHS APE students rather train the new students I was going to be having in class. And so we integrated 2 different levels of students to get involved in that. And of course, those students were so interested, they actually were chosen to attend the GLE that was held in Ireland the next year. You know, it's hard to do some of this research because we compete with so many different activities that students are involved in. So they're pointing to the clock here because in the summer we spend long hours here, sometimes at night. And of course, during the school year, we don't get out of here real quickly. But the thing is, I find that students are pretty interested. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, one of the things that's really got my students interested in a big way has been their chance to partner with schools around the world. We've done projects with students from Thailand. We've done projects with students from Sri Lanka, and also just recently with Qatar. Okay, again, I apologize for this, but I'm going to have to let my class in. So I'll be right back.
Presenting in the real world. We all understand all of that. Does anybody have any? I didn't see any questions in the chat yet for Diana, but please keep thinking about those as you are finishing watching Diana give her presentation. She's providing a great wealth of knowledge and experience and how she works directly with her students. So let me pass it back to Diana then.
I'm sorry, I'm back. So my students are going to be filing in. Sorry about that. We've got no place to go. We've got like 1,300 students here, and if we can't come to class, then it doesn't work out. So again, let me just talk about this in terms of building interest for the program. So when we have students who are presenting, it's one of those things that's just such a unique opportunity that they've never had a chance to do before. The chance to talk with students, like I said, from Sri Lanka. And when they had the chance to put together a symposium with them, it was huge. If you look down here in the lower right-hand corner, what's really interesting is that when you connect with students from, say, Thailand and such, it's one of those things where they have to, you know, we're at different time zones. So my students would literally get here at 6 a.m. in the morning just to communicate with the other schools that would be there at 6 p.m. at night. So again, kind of a unique experience for students. One of the other things I'd like to mention is how important the local training is that GLOBE does. So, sorry again, just a moment. Sorry, I have a sub out in the hall, and so she's trying to keep them all quiet, but it's the last hour of the day, so everybody's kind of high-spirited. So anyways, some of these local GLOBE training workshops have been fundamental in my own interest, and again, in making connections with teachers from around the area. These are some pictures from the summer with some projects that we did related, or maybe it was the summer before, but we did some things on the eclipse with Mission Earth out of Toledo. We did some things remotely and online, and it was a really great experience, again, to meet local teachers and to swap ideas about how we're going to do things with the eclipse. The other thing I'd like to mention is that when my students work on these projects, they don't do them just individually. We usually do things as team projects. And one of the nice things about that is that sometimes it's hard, at least for my district, for girls to necessarily work with guys to do research out of school. So the chance to have teams of girls doing some of this research has really been instrumental in getting them to be involved in science in ways that they couldn't have been, otherwise. So again, I'd just like to mention how important it is, the chance for them to present as much as possible. In the lower middle of this picture, one of the things you're going to see is some of my students who just recently presented at the American Geophysical Union presentations that they had for high school students. It was held in early January. And it's quite a unique opportunity for them to be able to have a chance to do that. And it really helps them to hone some of their presentation skills. Again, we've been all over, and I think that my students have been really excited about this. And the reason why they've had a chance to be all over is because of the opportunities that, again, that GLOBE has provided them with. We've actually been a GLOBE school since 1995 when the training first began. But one of the things, we didn't really become active until, let's say, around 2012. And it's been since then that we've really built the opportunity to do some of these research projects. And it seems like the interest in students is really, continuing every single year. The people that we've met have been just incredible. I can't begin to tell you the friendships I've made with people around the world, around the United States. Some of my students had a chance to meet the former head of NASA. We had, Tony Murphy actually visit our school. Like we said, Brian had a chance to be here. I think he's in one of the pictures here somewhere. So again, we've been blessed by the interest that people have had in what our students are doing. And when push comes to shove, one of the great things are what students actually accomplish. So if you take a look here at this young man in the middle, he did science research for 2 years with me. And now he just graduated from the University of Michigan. And he's now a Stanford PhD student in civil and environmental engineering. And he's researching things like water, sanitation, and hygiene. And that was him, I don't know if you saw it earlier, in the waiters. But I mean, they build this interest when they're sophomores. And then, of course, they learn from that and they go on to carry that into college. So if we take a look here again, one of the nice things, if you look up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see somebody who was a high school student who did GLOBE research as a sophomore. She helped swim with the sharks when we had a chance to go with GLOBE out to California. But now she's a high school teacher. She taught in another district. We were finally able to get her back to Crestwood. This is her first year as a teacher here at Crestwood. She's going to carry on that tradition. When I finish my teaching career, I know that some of the people who had a chance to, again, be involved in this program are going to carry those experiences for the rest of their life. When you take a look at the picture here up the upper right, when Tony Murphy was able to visit us, I was kind of concerned about what I was going to do that day because my students were all taking an AP test somewhere. So I didn't know what to do. I mean, because he was coming to visit, what would we show him? But I had former students come back, the alumni, and share with him the impact that GLOBE had made on their life. And it turned out to be a really meaningful experience for Tony and myself as well, because we got a chance to see the long-term impact that being involved in GLOBE in high school or middle school actually makes on the participating students. So my students heart GLOBE, and I have to say that I've been teaching now, and I was kind of, they mentioned this when we had the start of school. This is my 49th year of teaching at the high school. And I have to say that the reason why I continue to do it is because of my students and because of the chance we have to do GLOBE and to integrate that into the curriculum. It's been such a rich experience for my students and for myself that it's hard to really want to stop doing that. So again, that's pretty much what I've got to share. But if you've got questions, I can stop sharing my screen. And
Diana, I think we have a question. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I think we all applauding, and I see a lot of people joining, applauding you for your presentation. But it looks like Kevin, Kevin, why don't you just unmute yourself and ask your question?
Oh, sure. I was asking, what are you and your students going to do for the solar eclipse?
So this is one of the great things. I'd like to, thank Kevin for promoting that online, program that we were in last summer. So we're going to do something. One of the projects that my students are working on this year is using the Terra rover that we had. We want to use that we're going to train students to, well, I should step back. We're going to have my current AP students train some of our current freshmen to take lots of different atmospheric measurements. But then we're going to use the Terra rover to try to experiment and to see how quickly it can take measurements on several different areas while the eclipse is taking place. You guys are lucky. You're going to be close to totality. We're going to be at like 98% but that's going to be way more than what we had in 2017. And it was cool in 2017. So we're just praying for good weather. And again, as a result of doing that workshop this summer, some of the participants were kind enough to let me know that there was a place, at least until recently, where we were able to get some solar eclipse glasses. So I was able to get some donated to our school so that we're going to be able to put on a bigger program for some of the kids who just want to be there to see it. So we're going to try to make it a community event like we did before, but again, with kids having specific responsibilities for taking measurements in different areas of the Crestwood campus. So it's kind of big, but it's still evolving what we're going to do.
Great.
Diana, I would like to ask a couple questions on behalf of our international participants who are maybe not here, but watching this in recording. So first question that they're asking, can you please tell us more what is AP means? What is the AP class in the United States? Thank you.
Sure. Advanced placement in environmental science is one of several advanced placement classes where students, if they pass a test at the end of the year, can actually earn college credit. It's a lot like, the SAT that people are familiar with has merit because it's a norm test. If you get a certain score on it, it means something. So in the advanced placement world, if students take a test and they get a certain score, that means at the end of the year, when they go to university, they get 4 credits for having passed my class. So it's environmental science. If they're going into a business degree, it means it can count for their science requirement. If they're going into science, it can count as an elective. So it gives them a head start. And I have to say that in order to get into some of the more elite schools in the United States, they look for people who've taken rigor in their high school curriculum, and AP Environmental Science gives them that rigor.
Yeah, next question from international viewers and participants who are watching this most likely in recording. They asking, was it challenging for you to integrate the curriculum of GLOBE curriculum into your AP curriculum?
As it turns out, it actually was a pretty easy thing to do. I mean, there's not a certain requirement in terms of what sort of lab experience they have. The College Board just recently came out with some, and so we do some of those. But what we really like about the GLOBE program is that all of the protocols students use locally and that we take measurements on give them a better understanding of things like surface temperature and heat island. And so again, shout out to University of Toledo and Dr. Sykowski, because my kids did really well on a free response question they had to answer a couple of years, because it was all about the heat island effect, and my students had been taking data on that. So thank you, Dr. C.
Yeah. If I may, I'm watching the chat room together with Brian and see if there are any additional questions. There are not so far, but I see Brian put in the chat room useful information. You want to double check. So and copy and paste that information for you. And on behalf of the international viewers, again, maybe a question. They all are really in awe that you worked with Thailand and other countries. So they're amazed that your students came to school at 6 a.m. My goodness, it's just really a challenge, I guess. But they just really applaud your efforts to work with international and adjusting to a time difference and things of that nature. What would be your advice? Would it be difficult for you and for your class, since U.S. is a educational system in the U.S. is decentralized? But if there are countries with a centralized curriculum, do you see any possibilities for them to collaborate with your class or with classes like yours around the U.S. States?
Sure. So for example, in the school that we worked with in Qatar, although they had a curriculum that was all set, there were still special projects that they were involved in. The same thing is true with the school that we worked in at Thailand. They would have a science club that would be similar to what I have, where I meet with students after school. And so it would be with them. The thing that really made our project work out good with the school in Thailand is that they were a residential school. And because they were a residential school, we could be here at 6 a.m. again, and they could, after their dinner, join us at 6 p.m., during the time that their club met. In some cases, it's not a problem because of language differences. But in other cases, we've always been able to find an interpreter that's made things work okay.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, and speaking of the residential schools, our partners from countries in Africa, and we have, for those of you who are listening this and recording, just to remind that GLOBE is working with 27 countries in African continent. So the boarding schools here in US refer to one type of residential schools, but boarding schools in Africa, they refer, although it's the same terminology, but they refer to a different type of residential schools. So, and we found that it's really working well to work, like just Diana just like explained. It's just really, it's not a barrier. It's just really, you can make it work if you would like to really follow Diana's footsteps, right?
It's been one of the best things that I've done in my professional career is to connect the schools. It's been that much of a beneficial experience for my students and the participating students.
Yeah, thank you. And I know international participants asking a bunch of other questions. I don't know if we have, it looks like we have a question from Brian. Brian, do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead with your questions?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. So Diana, you mentioned, all the opportunities of working with, folks from all over the globe community, and all over the world. Do you find it easy or difficult to work directly with students from other globe countries on collaborative projects? And have you done much with this like lately, or have you done it like a long time ago, or you just you're a veteran at it, I'm assuming, but I don't know. And
Well, one of the things that's helped us is that, we've been, especially during the pandemic, because our students received certain stipends and we couldn't go anywhere, we were able to get money that we were able to use for equipment. And so what we did is we tried to pay that forward. And so if we had equipment that we're using here in the United States and we wanted to do similar measurements overseas, then we sent equipment to those countries. So to Thailand, we sent some of the kites that we were working with. To Qatar, we sent one of the weather stations that we were working with, so that we all had simultaneous equipment. We were all using the same protocols and the same equipment. And Ian, we were lucky to be able to do that. I said that we could share it just simply because, we had been given the experience to do that. But the language barrier, like I said, was a little bit of a problem, but we worked around it. And the time difference was a little bit of a problem, but we always made that work. The students just really like seeing, and again, we talk science, we do science, but they really want to know how things are in that country as well. So just sharing things culturally has been really rich.
yeah, that's amazing because that's what what Globe tries to have everyone do is to work on collaborative projects across the world, whether it be, and I know I've seen collaborative research projects between folks in the United States, students in the United States working with students in like Nigeria or Kenya or even Croatia. So lots of collaboration, and I know some have found it daunting, whether it be a language barrier or just the time for the students to actually get together, because we do have time zone differences, so that gets a little tricky as well. So, but yeah, so that's great. I'm glad to hear that, and that's what we're really trying to also emphasize, that we want that cross collaboration amongst different countries, because as you mentioned, one of the most important things is that the students, yes, they're taking these measurements, but they want to know what is happening in other parts of the world, places they may never get to travel to. And this whole doing the science together with the same protocols, using the same instruments. And thank you for sending these instruments to these other places, other locations. That's amazing. We need more of that. But yeah, so getting everyone involved in the different countries doing the same protocols, using the same equipment is just super vital for the students to understand what's happening there and how it can compare and contrast to what's happening in another location on the planet.
Yeah, I want to second Brian. Also encourage all of you who are in the US from all the 50 states. I know for sure, and Diane probably will second me as well, that collaboration between students doing GLOBE in different states in the US is also very exciting for students. So not only working internationally, but we are very diverse culturally and demographically. So I think when students from Alaska would like to collaborate with students from Florida, there is a
Yeah.
lot of conversations going on, or students from I don't know, Maine or Vermont or Massachusetts would like to collaborate with other states, and it's just really it provides a great opportunity. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, and that's what's great about IVSS, that affords the students the opportunity to do this, to work on similar research projects. Because if you look at the past IVSS, if you look at the past IVSS projects going back to as far as they are on the GLOBE webpage, you will see that there are a number of ones that we have cross collaboration across different GLOBE countries, and of course, as Larissa mentioned, we have ones that different schools from across the United States are doing as well. But as you know, we always want to see more of that, because the more the students understand the science happening in their location, they can understand the science happening in other locations. So I think it's such a great thing, and Diana, you've done such a great job, doing this over the years. So yeah, and to know that Crestwood has been basically a school a Globe school from the beginning. So that's just really amazing to see. And I'm still blown away by 49 years. Sorry, I just it blows me away. My wife is in her 27th year teaching. She's like, "Ooh," and I was like, I have to tell her, do not complain about 27 years because it's someone who's doing. She works actually with a math teacher who's in her 45th year, who teaches
Wow,
calculus and
that's impressive.
so. But yeah, at the high school level. But yeah, so thank you so much. Does anybody want to unmute and ask any questions to Diana while we have her? And as you know, she does have a classroom. She's in her classroom right now, so we don't want to hold her all day long. But feel free to unmute if you like.
I'll just chime in here real quick, Diana. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I just wanted to emphasize one thing that you said that I think is kind of often overlooked with working with GLOBE. We get so focused on protocols that we forget the cultural exchange with our neighbors across the water, or down the land. That I think that's a really important piece that kind of is that hook in a way for students to want to move forward in engaging with students from another country. And I just wanted to thank you for mentioning that. And I know that that's just a really important piece of the puzzle. But nonetheless, it's something that I think is a great first step in having those relationships strengthened.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks again for your help with things too as well.
Excellent. Anyone else? Would you like to unmute anyone?
I'll just say it's not a question. I'm really looking forward to seeing your students at the Midwest SRS. I'm looking forward to the presentation this year. And I just want to say thank you for your service and for just being such a leader in GLOBE. It's really inspirational. When I was teaching at Bowling Green at undergraduate courses, we'd always look at Crestwood's data. I've told Diana this before, because it's so impressive. And we look at it with jealousy, saying, come on, we can do it. Let's go get that data. And I'm looking at your website right now that Brian just put in there, and you're at 933,000 data entries, almost to 1 million. So let's all celebrate when you get there. I think that's going to be super awesome.
That's good. Thank you, Jody, too, for all you're doing to set up the SRS. My students look forward to that every single year. It's just been a really awesome experience for them.
Great.
So appreciate that.
Thank you, Jody. Holy cow, almost 1 million. Whew. Wow. Unbelievable. Well, no, very believable, but it's a first reaction. Anybody else? All right, Diana, any last minute words?
No, just thank you. Thank you to the GLOBE community for everything that everybody has contributed, because it truly has made a difference in the lives of my students. You have no idea how many places my students have been able to go and what they've been able to achieve, what they've done in college as a result of this, what career choices they've made. And it all started with GLOBE and those experiences that they first had with that. So again, I am indebted to all of you who and the GLOBE community have made all of those things possible. So I'm going to have to leave now because I have to get my class in here. Only about half of them are in. But again, thanks for the opportunity to present. And of course, you know, I'll continue to work with all of you guys. So again, much appreciate everybody's support.
Thank you so much, Diana. That was a great presentation. And yeah, we'll let you get to your class. But yeah, thank you for taking the time out to do this today. And it was invaluable information for us. And you know, you're one of those GLOBE superstars who set the standard and go above and beyond. So just wanted to thank you for all of that.
Thank you, Brian. All right. Bye-bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen, and I just have a couple more slides here, and then we can open it up for some, you know, some informal discussion about some things. So let me go ahead and go back to sharing my screen. It should be like everything. All right. Oh, didn't want to go from the start. My fault. All right. Can you see that, Larissa?
Yes, perfectly.
All right, great. Thank you. I always ask because, like I said earlier, Zoom has a mind of its own. It could be sharing some other computer somewhere in my house. I don't
No.
know.
No,
Yeah.
don't worry. We've all been there. We've done that.
Yeah. All right. So I showcased a few of these at last month's webinar, the January webinar. But here are some examples, just some examples that we've seen over the last several years of IVSS related projects related to trees and land cover. And this is one from Slovenia. Sorry, let me go to one. United States IVS 2022. We see here, this is where they were talking about carbon storage in native versus native trees. Now, we're not going to go through the whole posters or everything, but one thing I want to draw your attention to is you'll see that there's not one set format to, even though they ask for like a presentation or a PowerPoint for the IVSS submission, you will see that some have YouTube, and you may have submitted these already. Some have videos that they posted on YouTube, or they send a video in directly. There could be a document where it's an actual report of the research they did, or it can be like here from IVSS 2022 with the carbon storage. It's a professional looking poster. So all of this is great ways to showcase and represent the research that the students have been doing. And then we have this one here. This is more the report one. This is just the cover photo of it from Slovenia in 2023. This was looking at the investigation of trees in Ljubljana Basin in Slovenia. And this is a lot, this stems a lot from some of the things that we've done with Slovenia. I was over there in November of 2022 doing presentations, but attending the International Forest Conference. So that was a really amazing conference, and that was actually in a location about, I would say, about 2 or 3 hours from Ljubljana in a site. So this was really cool. So this was part of it. What the teachers learned at that event, they brought back to their students in the classroom, and then they showed them how to investigate tree height and land cover and protocols like that. And of course, they're not all just using the GLOBE Observer when they're looking at trees and land cover. They're, the traditional protocols are there as well. Kind of like backing up here, we had one in Nigeria. This is IVS 2021. They were looking at land cover land use and the value of land cover mapping for basically planning and management of local areas. And this would have, like I said, been in Nigeria. IVSS 2020. There was a huge push, I know, in 2020 and 2021 with a combination of some of the GLOBE countries, as well as the SEAS program that Peter Nelson talks about. SEAS program has our colleagues Peter Nelson, Rusty Lowe, and Cassie Sofing, and Teresa Schwerin have a lot to do with the SEAS program. But there's been a lot of tie-in, for a while, several years, of looking at land cover and changes in land cover and the distribution of mosquito larvae, a diversity of mosquito larvae, abundance, based upon what type of land cover we're looking at. And I should let you know that I'm on the GLOBE, the NASA GLOBE team that reviews all the photos and approves the photos that come in for the GLOBE Observer. I do this. My job is I do this every Monday, literally several thousand photos I review just about every Monday. And we have just a mind-blowing amount of mosquito habitat mapper input from and observations submitted to the GLOBE database from Thailand. And they've done a lot of research there because, as you know, mosquito and mosquito-borne illnesses are all around the globe, but in Thailand they really have an issue with this. So the students have been trying to figure out what is the tie-in between land cover, trees and all that with mosquito habitats. We have a couple here, older ones. These are just some screenshots of their parts of their posters. We have Malta did one of the effects of trees on urban temperatures. And we have Oman did one in 2018, the study of mango trees in looking at land cover and mango trees and where they're best suited in these areas. So, you wouldn't, a lot of people don't think, Oman, pretty, dry, arid area, but, they were looking at, the study of mango trees there. So that's just very cool. And these are the types of things that, I bet you a lot of students around the world don't know about. So, with your students, those of you who teach students who are on here today, go through the GLOBE database and the old IVSS project. There's a keyword search you can do. You can filter in different years and locations, and you can type in trees as a keyword. It'll bring you up all the IVSS projects that had to do with trees. Or you can look up land cover. You can look up heat island. You can do all these things, and it'll find those keywords in the titles, and you can check this out because there is a lot going on here. When I look at it, I see so many things that I did not know were research projects because there are literally hundreds of them submitted every year, and I haven't had a chance to look at all of them all the way back through 2018. There's thousands of them since then. And then this is one cool. I'm going to show you this because it's near and dear to my heart, because I was on the supervisor team when I was in Kazmu, Estonia, back in August of 2022, and I was there for the Estonia Learning Expedition, and I was working with students from the Czech Republic, Estonia, Lithuania, and the United States. They were all teamed together, which was really cool. That ties into what Diana was talking about, and all the students working together and learning what's going on. And when we were doing this, we were out there doing land cover and triad observations in the forest around Kazmu, and it's a very northern part, right on the Baltic Sea, northern part of the country of Estonia. And it's basically a peninsula, and we were right at the edge where the forest meets the ocean. So it was really, really cool. It met the sea. But it was cool because there was environments there where some of these students from these different countries, they've never been in an environment like that before. I haven't been in one like that before. The way the land cover was sitting with the pine trees and the grasses and the rose bushes, literally the rose bushes growing in the sand on the beaches. So I've never seen that before. So that was great. So we had them out for several days doing observations. So this just happens to be one. They did one overarching one of what was going on. And, the objective of this learning expedition was to create these research projects and submit them to IVSS 2023. And there was a fair number of those that were submitted from students in Estonia, but then with partners in different countries outside of Estonia. So we were really excited to see that. And this is just some of the slides, some of the examples of some of the results that were part of their slides, which is a long PowerPoint presentation. But they went and they did the tree height observations. They went and they did the muck codes and during the land cover observations. And then they also had some. They brought in some local foliage books and plant identification guides for Estonia. And they basically mapped out a quadrant in the forested area, and they were identifying all these different plants that were just in this one plot. And, when you just look at it, with the naked eye, you don't really see all these until you really get down literally on the ground and investigate what you're seeing. And you can see they saw all of these within this really small plot just next to the Baltic Sea in this forested area that you see in the pictures above. So this was a great environment to do this, and the students from all over the world got to work together. When I say the world, you saw that Lithuania, Estonia, the United States, and others were all part of this one research project. And I want to show this because this is one that was just submitted for this year. And this was from Nigeria. And this is one of the early submissions. And I won't go through all of it because you still have to be judged, right? So this is just showing you some screenshots of what they were doing. It was the environmental benefits of trees in urban secondary schools. So they were going through and looking at basically the temperatures in the areas, around their schools, and where trees were growing. They were taking the temperature of the bare ground versus under the tree, and then the asphalted areas nearby. So they did a really pretty heavy duty analysis on what they were looking at, and you can see here there were a lot of students involved. Just from these secondary schools, there's a lot of names there. So we were really excited to see this come into the GLOBE database. So I haven't reviewed the entire thing yet because if some of you may have been judges or are going to be judges for IVSS, you get assigned some ones, but make sure you take a look at this one because this is one of the first ones that was submitted for IVSS 2024, and near and dear to my heart. It has to do with trees and looking at temperatures as well. All right. And this is the poster that they put together. There is a lot of information on this poster. It's just overwhelming, but you can see how significant the research is, and how in depth it is just by looking at this. And we are not going to go through all of this. So just wanted you to get an example of some of the things that are being submitted already. With a little less than a month left for the submission period. And we always talk about the need for taking lots of observations in a smaller area. And here's an example that our friends from the GLOBE Netherlands, this is Markelo, Netherlands. This was taken back on the 6th of December. We actually created a social media post for this that went out on X, formerly Twitter. I think it was about a year or two ago. But this was really cool because it was an example of over 110 tree height observations in this forested area that you see in the top larger image. You can see these are all small photos of tree heights that they took. You can see around the perimeter of a lot of this. They didn't go deep into it. Might have, it's a little trickier to possibly get into the middle of those forests, but you can see in this area, which is about a 1.25 square kilometers, that they did over 110 tree height observations in this area. Of course, this isn't an exhaustive measurement of all the trees because there's probably, 100,000, couple 100,000 trees in that location. But this is a great representation of trying to figure out, the tree heights in all the tree heights in a smaller area. And then each one of these trees, you can figure out based on the height and the circumference, how much carbon dioxide potentially that tree is, pulling in from the atmosphere and, sequestering as carbon as the tree grows over time and keeps on pulling in this this carbon dioxide in from the atmosphere. So this is a really cool example that I'd like to show. And I know our good friend Mateus, he was excited to share this several years ago. So this is great coming out of the Netherlands. So last couple slides here before we open it up to some informal discussion in the last few minutes remaining. I went and I grabbed the data from the last 5+ years. When I say 5+, this takes us all the way back to the day that we launched the campaign on the 15th of September in 2018, all the way through today. Okay, and this is showing you a distribution of the tree height. So the ranges here, as you can see, we have this area where we tend to see the most of the trees that were measured fit into a particular area. And of course, we have the outliers. We have a bunch of the really small ones down here, and some of those are outlier data because there are some listed in there for some reason in the database as 0.01 meters, and that might be just a default for a measurement that was either above or below the actual capability of the app. But you can see there are some way out here into the 72, 73 meters tall trees, which are massive size trees, right? I remember I did one of them out at Sequoia National Park in California, where it was, one of the tallest trees in the United States. It was a General Sherman tree. And I don't have it converted to meters, but it was approximately 275 feet tall. It was almost at the the highest range that I could get with the app, because as you know, when you hold the phone up, you're using your phone's camera to take an observation of the tree height, and you have to angle it from your eye level to the top of the tree and to the base of the tree. But my phone was almost horizontal to the ground when I was taking this observation. And, when it becomes horizontal, the app will tell you this is outside the limits of what we can get. So with the app, so it was just there. So it was really difficult to take that observation, but it was successful. So I just want to show you this. And then also I have a couple other distributions here. We have it's a distribution of latitudes and longitudes. And you can see there are certain areas here around the world, the latitudes where we have a lot more tree observations than others. And then sorry that the text is so small on the bottom. That's what it defaults to on the x-axis there. It gets a little tricky, but it's basically the number of individual longitudes versus the distribution of tree longitudes, and the same with the latitudes. This isn't perfect data, of course, as I mentioned, because there are some outliers there where if you've gone to the visualization system with GLOBE, you've noticed if you go to search for trees that there are some errors where someone shows there's a tree height observation in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's not where there is an island. So, sometimes we get those errors. That's what data collection, data analysis, data input, it happens sometimes. So we don't know the exact reason for all those, and the user may not as well. So, but I just want to showcase that with that as well. Oh yeah, IVSS 2024 important dates. I marked off what has happened so far. I crossed that out. I put a box around March 6th, 2024 is the final day for submitting projects. That began, as you can see, on the 15th of December, 2023. And then after that, it's left up to the judges, where there's a judging webinar, which I mentioned earlier that many of you may be part of. And then also there's the judging period for these projects is the 20th of March through the 3rd of April. And then the Earth Day celebration on April 22nd, which is, I believe, a Monday this year. And the announcement of the stipends for the project recipients. So, and this is, sorry, this long URL here in the bottom, I'll put that in the chat in a second. But this is where you can find all this information as well. So this isn't, private to anyone. This information you can find on that website. So we're going to finish it off here with what do you need? Before we get to that, I just want to say, before I forget it, happy Valentine's Day to those who celebrate it, okay? But I want to showcase this. This is my favorite one that NASA put together. I think it was last year. I'll be your Valentine, just give me the signal. I just thought that was cool because we do deal with a lot of satellites, of course, at NASA, and we compare a lot of the satellite data, the NASA satellite data to the data from the GLOBE program, from some of the different protocols, whether it be clouds or land cover or trees or other things as well. So just wanted to pop that in there. Probably should have put that slide ahead of time. But here are these three major questions under the what do you need overarching question that we left last month's webinar with. Will your students be submitting a 2024 IVSS research project? What are some student research ideas you were thinking of, or maybe your students have already submitted these? And then what do you need from the Trees campaign? And as I mentioned in the earlier part of the webinar during the introduction, showing the agenda, that last question, especially what do you need from the Trees campaign team? You can put in the chat what you'd really like to see, but then also, in future campaign webinars, because remember this year 6 of the campaign, the last webinar for year 6, and we don't know anything about a year 7, have no idea, so I don't have any answers to that. But year 6 will end in September, so the end of that is September 30th of 2024 of this year. So we will have our final year 6 webinar sometime in September. So we have March, April, May, June, July, August, and September to present things that you really want to see during the campaign webinars. So let me go ahead and unshare and come back to the webinar room, and we can open it up. And feel free if you have any thoughts, Larissa, or anyone here while we have this, but feel free to put things in the chat or unmute, and maybe you have an example of what you've done with your students, kind of like Diana did on a larger scale, or just have some questions for other people who are on the webinar with us. So let me go ahead and come back to the main room.
Sure, this is great. I'm watching in chat room. If we have any questions, please type it in or just unmute yourself, as Brian said. Brian, this is just one of the really tremendously successful webinars. I love all your webinars and always looking forward to it. But today's webinar was especially very special, I would just say. And Diana did a very good job of presenting. One of the questions that I had from students and from teachers, if they would like, they're very excited to really visit the moon tree, and they were wondering if any research can be devoted to the moon trees in the U.S.
As far as students doing research with the moon trees?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. You know, we haven't seen any specifically come into the GLOBE database yet for student research, but yeah, I'm going to put on here a link. I have to find it, but I know Peter has mentioned he has done a really cool, let me go find it here, a cool story map on the Oregon moon. Yeah, I have it right here. He did a story map, which is a really cool way to showcase some of the research that he has done visually and, you know, analytically with the moon tree, the Douglas fir at Oregon State. And I'm going to pop it in the chat here. That is, it's story maps on ArcGIS. And you can see, and if you've been with the you know, the campaign for several years, you may remember Dorian Janney. She has done, yeah, she has done a lot of story maps, you know, basically telling your tree stories. So that the story mapping is it really, you know, it takes a little getting used to figure it out, but once you get going with it, you can create some really awesome things. You know, well, now that I'm thinking of it, let me quickly share my screen so I can show you the link that I just shared, because this is one way that is a great way to showcase, you know, the research that you're doing. So you can see here, moon tree at Oregon State University.
Oh, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is one that Peter has put together, and, you know, it talks all about, you know, the history of this moon tree in this location in Corvallis. I should have mentioned it's Corvallis, Oregon, where Oregon State University is, where Peter is an instructor and a researcher there. But it talks all about like the history of this tree and, you know, when it was planted, you know, and where it was planted on the campus. Some quotes about it. Then he does some really cool remote sensing parts of it to look at LiDAR data, you know, 1 meter resolution LiDAR data showing, you know, the moon tree near the building, which is right around here. And then also, you know, figuring out what elevations are there, and then looking at it using different tools. Okay, and you can see this is through the GLOBE visualization system, showing where the Apollo 14 moon tree is, and a lot of the other trees that Peter has done. You know, he's measured, you know, probably hundreds to 1,000 trees, you know, either around Oregon State University or as he's hiking up and down Mount Hood in Oregon. So and he's done also land cover, mosquito, and all these things. But this is a really cool way to showcase, you know, the moon tree, because you know, it looks at the history of it, it looks at the measurements of it. It has the great visual representation. Here we're looking at the entire tree from a distance, where he probably took the observation from the tree at observation, and then he did a land cover there. You can see also what's important here is, and we've mentioned this during a lot of the webinars, is that when you're at the base of the tree, do a land cover observation, because this really tells us what the understory of the tree looks like. Because, you know, a lot of times, you know, the satellite observations, yes, we're looking at the trees from space, looking at the top of the trees, but sometimes the understory is so thick, we don't really know what's happening underneath it. That's why we need these up photos in land cover and the land cover tool to actually see what's going on. And then there's also a down photo you can do, which will show you what the ground is like, what you might be able to see the exposed roots, what the root structure looks like. But all this data helps us understand, you know, the environment that these trees are growing in, which is great, because as of now, there are approximately 48 moon trees around the United States that are actually still living and accessible to the public. There are more that are living, okay, but some are on private property. There are actually a few there that nobody even has any information about, and there are unfortunately ones that have died or, you know, fallen from, storms or illness from blight or some type of parasite, what have you. So, and that's why we're trying to continue this too with the Artemis mission, which you learned about on several webinars here this year, and I think part of year 5 of the campaign, where we're hoping to we're going to continue this legacy of the Apollo 14 moon trees with these Artemis moon tree seeds. And honestly, I don't know anything about the selection process really right now. Yeah, I know some of you on here may have submitted, if you're in the U.S., submitted application for an Artemis moon tree, which are being germinated right now, and that's being led by a different group. That's not us, of course, but we want to continue that legacy with people following with what's happening with the tree that they're planting, or a Artemis tree that has been planted near their location. So, I'm sure that some database will be created at some point from the folks leading this. Some of the folks leading this, of course, with the Artemis mission, some are based at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, in the United States, and there's some other ones all around NASA. So, but yeah, so that was kind of a long-winded explanation of what you can do, but this is with moon trees. But yeah, this is a really cool way to showcase, not just the measurements or observations of the moon tree, but basically the history of it and what the moon trees mean in science and culturally.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. This is a great one. In this link, you put it in the chat room. It's available for all. This is a great story. Yes, absolutely. And I know international participants who are that's just the first time planning on submitting the projects for IVSS. Brian, do you want to say a couple words about the GLOBE YouTube channel and where they can find information about on how to form research questions? And I believe you and others in GLOBE put a lot of information on the GLOBE YouTube channel. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, so the GLOBE YouTube channel is a combination of lots of things, as you just mentioned, that yes, there's like tutorials on all these different ways of doing the GLOBE data. There's special videos that have been created for each one of the IVSS project programs each year. There's ones that showcase the student research that is being presented upon, even, and the scientists presenting at some of the annual meetings or the GLOBE learning expeditions. But I'm going to pop in here just that link to the GLOBE YouTube channel. Let me grab this here. I have it right here. But there's videos, there's shorts, there's playlists involved, and there's a bunch of things about some of the local meetings, like in Europe and Eurasia. Right now we're in as Grace from the Global Implementation Office is leading the GLOBE Year of Climate and Carbon. So there's a great number of videos there which talk about, how to, combine the GLOBE data with real world experience, real world science out there, and how we can compare all these things. So let me pop that in the chat. But it's a great resource to look for ways to, for things to serve as catalysts to the IVSS research project, or just research projects in general, because we know there's a lot of GLOBE students out there and teachers that do this research all year long, and it's not just for IVSS. And that's one of the important things. We want the IVSS projects, but we don't want them to just do the research for the sake of submitting a project just to IVSS. That's why, as Diana mentioned, that the students working together all throughout the year is so vital as well.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions, or concerns about IVSS? I mean, if it's something I can't answer during IVSS, I can reach out to folks like Madeline and the folks at GIO as well, who are running these things, or for Grace Crane, right, for the Year of Climate and Carbon. Seems like we lost a couple people because they had commitments at the top of the hour. That's fine. That's what happens.
Great webinar, Brian. Fantastic.
Yeah, and I apologize for the last minute change in part of the agenda, but some of the things that Peter Nelson was going to talk about is things that he's been working on. And I feel is couple of those things, if I try to go too far in depth, I'm going to be stealing his thunder. And he has this intimate knowledge of a lot of this research that he's been doing, and the research that he's been looking at and analyzing that's coming in from into the GLOBE community. All right, so I think please stay tuned for an email coming out with the recording of this and some of the links. They'll all, as you know, once we put this on the once I put this recording on the GLOBE website on the campaign webinar page, underneath the video, I have a list of links that were showcased during the webinar. And then also stay tuned for a future email for when and where and what will be the focus of the March webinar. Both Peters have been, and I have been extremely busy in the last few weeks, and we're prepping for lots of things in March, and of course, everything Earth Day related in April. So, with NASA, it's Earth Day every day, basically, but, a lot of events pop up in March and April. And I'm excited because my family and I are going to Iceland in the end of March, the beginning of April for their spring break. So we're excited about that. So we're going to be taking a bunch of observations when I'm in Iceland, of course. Anything else from anyone? Larissa, anything you'd like to add?
No, except just it's a fantastic opportunity to participate in all your webinars. And today's webinar is no exception, but it's just, again, it was very special webinar with Diane's presentation and with your comments and information that you provided. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yep. Of course. And yeah, we just wanted to, as I mentioned, been working with Diana for a long time, and she is doing amazing stuff, which all of you who are on here, Diana, and all of you are doing amazing stuff. And thank you all for, attending these webinars. And we know it's not always a perfect world where everybody can join the webinar at the same time. So hence the recording, each recording gets viewed, a lot of times. So, thank you for being here in person and taking time out of your day. And please feel free to reach out to any of us. You know how to get a hold of us, our emails. If you have any questions or concerned about IVSS, the campaign, the observations, GLOBE Observer, the GLOBE protocols, any of this information. So feel free. Or, of course, NASA. I'm based at NASA, so NASA related questions, whether earth science and things like that. I want to try to get, even though it doesn't have it's not really specifically trees or land cover related, I would love to get a speaker from the new PACE mission to come on here, because we can really, potentially tie this in the observations from PACE, maybe not directly because we're not actually out there measuring specific ocean color with the GLOBE protocols, but ocean color, when we're talking about that, looking at chlorophyll concentration, things like that. We do look at chlorophyll concentrations for plants on land. So it's a combination of lots of cool things that this mission is doing, looking at our changing environment. And it's, in the hyperspectral range. So there's lots, it's basically going to see, so much more than any Earth observing satellite has seen even in the past. So, we're excited about this once the data comes, but, we're going to have someone, I'm going to bring someone in at some point, in the next couple months to talk about the PACE mission. I won't bother them right now because they just launched it and they're just all going crazy right now with making sure everything's working correctly. So thank you everyone for joining, and stay tuned once again for those emails and invitations for the next webinar. And happy Valentine's Day tomorrow, and everybody be safe in everything you do.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.